Walnut and the Coach, Season 2, Episode 1. Here we are. Coach Jim Stroker, dynamite guy. You want to say a few words?
Well, I just flattered and honored to be here with you because there's one thing that attracts me to you. And although I'd like to say it's your looks and the way you speak and the way you handle yourself, the thing that's most attractive about being with you and being around you is your energy level. And that vibrance, energy, or thirst to be alive is like, it's like a magic vacuum that makes people and Paul, I'd like to say everyone has it, but I would say everyone has access to it. But I think that's our job. And it's one of the things that I'd like to talk about today is, how do we keep that energy level up in a really turbulent, difficult, challenging life that we're in right now? So yes, excited, good to see you, and yes. How's all?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you for that affirmation. And I got to tell you, I got to give it back to you. So before we jumped on this call, I was thinking about you, and I was thinking, I love the spirit. The coach just brings this big spirit, and it always fills my bucket also. So right back at you. I really appreciate you, and I'm excited for this conversation. I was thinking also about this, I'm calling this season 2 of Walnut and the Coach because, we did a sort of a season over the last year, and then we both got busy with the summer. Here we are, we're embarking. I know you do a lot of stuff with schools. I do a lot of work with Head Start around the country. So we're, as we launch this new season, I call it season 2. And I was thinking about, the mission that you and I gave to these conversations to help give hope and inspire, and again, that really rings true for me still. So I'm excited to go with the conversation. I want to turn it back to you.
Yeah, great, Paul. Yeah, so I don't know if this is true or not, because historically there's always been turbulent times, and historically people have been through pandemics and race riots and challenges with the Second World War. I mean, people have always been going through this, but it seems right now like there's an awful lot of people that are getting really impacted by the stress of the times. And so, in addressing teachers who, they're kind of saying to me, unless you've taught post-pandemic, you don't really understand. Coach, you were a teacher before the pandemic. Now we're teachers after the pandemic. And the impact that the pandemic had on not only students, but teachers and people have made it a lot more stressful to teach. Yeah. So more than ever, we need to create some kind of strategy that allows us to keep our energy up and excitement for what we're doing and love and passion to teach. So what's the trick? How do you integrate in self-care, self-regulation practices that are real? Because, I can't get up at 4:45 and, work out for an hour and a half. I've got 2 kids. I've got a tough job. I've got a mom who's hurting, who I'm taking care of at night. And I don't have time to create these boundaries of, these big morning routines. So I want to hear about, alternative ways to integrate in self-care. So that's kind of where I am excited about talking to you today about, because you're an expert in this area. So what do you think?
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate the praise. I don't know that I'm an expert, but I think about it a lot, and I do talk with folks quite a bit. And going back to the conversation that you and I were having just before we started recording, first I want to affirm what you're saying, because it's my perception also that we're living in a more stressful time, and it almost seems like the spike of the pandemic from about 2020 over the last couple of years really sort of ratcheted up the stress throughout society. I see this in the world where I operate and where I work as well, doing consulting and training work. The people doing a lot of the work that I did for many years as a Head Start director are going through some of the most stressful times trying to manage programs for young children and their families. So I agree with you 100%. The stress level seems like it is at a high. Going back to what we were saying, I always begin with this notion that I think we have a shared mission as a humanity. And that shared mission is to help and support the well-being of humanity and this beautiful world that we've all inherited. And when I think about that mission to help and support humanity in our world, it begins with self-care, personal wellness, self-regulation. For me, that's the first component. And I'll come back to that. The second component is caring for those around me, family, friends, local community. Third, caring for all of humanity, big humanitarian issues, poverty, disease, education, wars, conflicts, all of these big humanitarian issues. How can we put some energy there? And then fourth, how do we care for this beautiful world, the earth, the environment, the ecosystem? So these are the four areas I think about. Coming back to self-care, I always sort of come back to what I think of as the anchoring practices, the things that I always return to as the things that I think are most foundational to self-care. And I agree with you, in our hectic, stressful, busy lives, sometimes we have to find innovative ways, to implement these anchoring practices. But I always come back to exercise. What can we do, for, sort of physical activity, intake. I used to call it diet and nutrition. Now I call it intake, meaning everything that we put into our bodies, everything that we put in has an impact, not just, food, but caffeine, ibuprofen, anything that we're putting in, it all has impact. So intake. The third is sleep. And a lot lately, I'm thinking about sleep hygiene, because when I talk to people about sleep, the majority of people I talk to express a lot of challenge around getting a good, healthy night's sleep. And I understand that, and the fourth are activities to really quiet the mind and cultivate stillness. And I always say to people, you don't need to just do, meditation. Maybe that's your thing, maybe yoga, but there are a lot of things that we can do in our lives to cultivate quiet in the mind and stillness. So those for me are the four big anchoring practices. And if we can find innovative ways, even if we don't have a lot of time, how can we modify our lifestyle to incorporate those kinds of things?
I love that. And I think it's terrific again, and you're so good at this, is having your anchoring practices. Like I got to go back to, eat, move, sleep, and think, and make those, at least I know what they, so now I want to actually bring them into, okay, I know I should exercise. I don't have an hour in the morning. Does it really make a difference if I walk down the block and back outside and get a little fresh air and breathe? That's nothing. Is that really going to help? Does it really matter if, if today, I choose to eat, this apple with almond butter on it instead of the slice of pepperoni pizza that's right there? Do these little things really make a difference? Or do I need, is taking a shower, is that self-care? Is reading 2 pages from a book, is that really self-care, or do they need to be bigger? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question, Coach. I think all of those little things that you mentioned, the cumulative effect of all of those little things is profound. I think in terms of our wellness, right? Our personal wellness. I was talking with folks recently, at an event, and I was saying, I think they recommend something like 150 minutes a week of cardio activity. That's the optimal, for wellness. That's 22 minutes a day, right? It's roughly 22 minutes a day. And I'll tell you, the activity that I promote the most is walking. I think that actually is one of the most accessible activities for us. So really, if you think about call it a 20-minute walk, 22 being optimal, 10 minutes out, 10 minutes back, find a small segment of the day. Maybe if it's not the morning, maybe it's the lunch hour, maybe it's sometime after dinner. I don't know. We got to try to take this approach, I think, where we fit these things in. And then the small things that you mentioned, in terms of diet, absolutely, or intake, as I like to call it these days. Absolutely. All of those things, whatever we put in, it's either going to add to our wellness or it's going to take us back a step. So I think incremental, right? Incremental progress.
Yeah. I mean, your number 4 on your anchoring practices, is the thinking part, what's going on between the ears. And there's self-care, and we could call it self-defeating thoughts. And, just listening to John Gordon this week. If you remember, he wrote The Energy Bus, a lot of other books, but he talks about first thought, second thought. And there's these first thoughts that sneak in, like these first thoughts that are kind of like a dream or a nightmare. So I went to sleep last night. I actually was dreaming, Paul. It's interesting. I didn't pick that dream out. It was like it came from my unconscious mind. It's wild what happened. It just came. And John suggests these first thoughts that slide in, these self-defeating thoughts, these thoughts of negativity, thoughts of fear, thoughts of self-doubt, thoughts of divisiveness. Like, these thoughts aren't you. They just slide in. And for us to become aware of first thoughts and kind of giggle at them, and then add to them or layer on top of them, or attack them like the good wolf would, these second thoughts of, look, Jim, you got this. Don't listen to that first thought. So do you find that these first thoughts sneak in, and do you feel like you have control of them?
Oh my gosh, Coach! This is one of the most profound points right here, right? I think this is one of the big challenges for all of us. Is yes, those sort of thoughts, they absolutely sneak in. I think for all of us, and you're right. I think the real skill I think we need to cultivate, because I don't know that it's it's automatic for us, is the ability to sort of recognize and say, oh, this is a thought that is, like you said, negative or self-defeating or not productive. How can we identify that and say, I really want to think about, I want to reframe, right? I want to reframe and think about this situation differently.
Right. And the reframing to me is, I love the term, and it's certainly, well used in dialectic behavior therapy, crucial to take a thought and be able to flip it. So I'm using this old school tape recorder that I carry around with me, and I want it to be like this stupid thing that I can't miss, right? Because I get these self-defeating thoughts. They slip in. Like this morning, my shoulder was hurting a little bit, and I started to slide a little bit. And all of a sudden, when I started to slide, I said, I got to talk to myself, right?
You're doing great. Look, don't forget the last month, how many times you really reached out, took care of those really incredible grandchildren, and did a great job. Don't forget how many talks you gave to kids who were hurting and needed a little inspiration, hope. Jim, don't forget how many mornings you woke up at 5 a.m. and stayed with your consistency to write every day. Jim, don't forget how many nights you bypassed that pepperoni pizza and had your salmon top of that tavern salad.
Well, I mean, you can do what you want, but this is a trick, a hack, is to make an audio tape. Like if you were talking to your best friend, right? Your best friend. Like if Paul said, Jim, I'm down in the dumps. I don't know, just had a rough night. I woke up this morning. I don't know if I'm good enough. I would give you like the ultimate pep talk, right?
Right.
So the ultimate pep talk, I think we have to give ourselves that ultimate pep talk when those first thoughts sneak in. So I think this is a great self-care hack or strategy that you can use. Do you do that at all, Paul?
I do, Jim, and I was saying to folks recently when we were having a similar conversation, I was saying, I think the first element to this practice, if you will, is noticing, right? Just like awareness of, it's almost like we have to step back from the thoughts and say, I don't have to identify with the first thought that comes in, right? And similar to like a meditation practice, I also don't need to fight it, right? I can simply identify it, like in meditation, they say, don't fight the thoughts, like observe them like clouds going by. Don't overly attach, don't fight, just observe. So I think a similar practice applies where we can say, oh, like the first step is that noticing and that awareness, like, oh, I'm having this thought, this isn't serving me that well, right? But I don't want to fight it or feel bad about it. I just want to think about, how can I think about this situation differently? I was having a very similar, like you were mentioning, like the shoulder thing, I think, it's like we all get our aches and pains and things, and I've been experiencing, Jim, I'm not a golfer, but I got the golfer's elbow, there's the tennis elbow on the outside, there's the golfer's elbow on the inside. And I'm thinking, oh, I can't do this particular activity because I'm trying to give it some rest right now. And then I'm thinking, what, this opens up an opportunity. I want to do a little bit more like cardio stuff, like that doesn't involve the elbow, right? But it took me a moment or a couple of moments, to sort of identify, oh, I'm thinking about this kind of situation negatively. How can I think about this, like, as an opportunity, right? Reframe this as an opportunity. And I know it's work. I always say to folks, I don't want to profess that this is all easy. It's just we commit to it. We commit to it and say, I'm going to just keep practicing, and hopefully get better. So that's where I begin.
I think you're exactly right. It's not easy. And our amygdalas just hijack us, and take us down those wrong paths. But you said it. Oh, I notice it. And the more times you notice it and reframe, just like a foul shooter, the more times you shoot, the better you get at it. And all of a sudden you're like, what? The Jocko Willink viral YouTube video, good, right? Like, oh my God, you hurt your shoulder. Good. I'll get better with my other arm. David Goggins, and my friend Michael Gervais says, you're either like in a karate move with those statements or Aikido, and Aikido would kind of flow with it. Karate is like, oh, really? Like David Goggins goes, so, it's raining out. So, I got a bad foot. So, I mean, to me, that's like karate, like boom, boom, where Aikido is like, my daughter, Allie Stroker, is in a wheelchair. And, Allie, how are you going to push a wheel? How are you going to handle pushing your baby, in a stroller? You've got to use your arms. And she goes, I am a stroller. So that to me is like Aikido. It's like the flow. And like Bruce Lee, like be like water and just go with it, and don't fight it so much. So, but reframing, to me, is one of the ultimate acts of self-care.
Yes,
That's
I agree.
hard.
Absolutely, Coach. It is. And I think we need to, like you were saying, like, if I reached out to you and I was, I was having a hard time and I was kind of in the dumps, you would encourage me, you'd give me back that encouragement, then you're absolutely right. We need to give that to each other. We need to give it to ourselves, right? And so encouraging ourselves. I'll tell you, what you're mentioning, it reminds me. And it is work, like to your point, it is work. And I think, similar to like we were saying earlier about, even if we need to, work in little bits of exercise, to incorporate that, these little bits of self-regulation that help us notice, have the awareness, remind ourselves, hey, I don't have to identify with this. I can reframe this. I can think about this differently. But, one of the really, powerful things I observed recently is, you and I both love the ocean, right? And I know we're both in love with the ocean. And I consider myself to be a novice surfer, Jim. I only get as you know me, I only get a couple opportunities a year to practice my surfing, right? At down at Long Beach Island, and but I love surfing, and I admire people who are really skillful at surfing. So there's a professional surfer. He's a young guy. His name is Kai Lenny. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this guy. Yes, Kai Lenny, and he's and he's native, I believe, to Maui. And quick shout out to our Ohana on Maui as they rebound from this disaster they recently had. So I'm watching this video, Kai Lenny, the surfer, and he's at Jaws. He's on Maui. He's he's at this epic surf location called Jaws. It's only for the elite. It's not for guys like me, right? Monster waves. And and it's the whole deal where you got to go out with the jet ski, to actually get to these gigantic waves. And he gets blown back toward the shore, and he's kind of by the rocks. And and whoever it is with the jet skis, comes to try to grab him out of the rocks. And Kai, his helpers, the jet ski, they all get blown back past the rocks into the river. So he's like really set back now. And he says, there are people, like observing all of this. Some of them are giggling. He's like, I'm humiliated. I'm struggling here, in this situation. And he says, I had this moment. And he said, maybe this is a test. We could use the word test. We could use the word opportunity. He has this moment, profound, right? Where he reframes, right? He doesn't use the word reframe, but boy, he's reframing. He says, maybe this is a test. Maybe I can overcome this and I can get back out there to these gigantic waves. And you know what, Jim? He goes back out. He has the day of his life. He catches some of the most epic waves and some of the most magnificent surfing, right, in recent history. Just outstanding. And I was watching this, literally, I was watching this last night and thinking this was this epic moment of reframing in this moment of extreme challenge, So I think it goes to what we're talking about.
It's really hard, but I think it's one of the keystones to self-care is, is this happening to me or for me? And if it's happening for me, what is the lesson here? What can I learn from it? And, it's hard. It's easy to say, it's hard to do,
yes.
But the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's all about frequency of reps. And so, yeah, I love, and I think one of the greatest forms of self-care is focusing in on what you can control and not getting caught up in things you can't control. Most of our stress, as we've talked about on here, is built on things that you can't control. Right. And, it's that simple. Like, how much energy, how much effort, how much focus today are you going to put in on all that stuff that you can't control?
Right.
Anyway,
Right. The serenity prayer, right? The serenity prayer. Exactly.
What about boundaries? Tell me about boundaries.
Boundaries. Well, gosh, boundaries, how are you thinking, tell me more about, like, because my mind goes to a lot of places.
Yeah. So yeah. When my daughter Allie was on Broadway, it came to fruition more than anything. It was so hard. The stakes were so high. The 6-day-a-week shows, like, you had to be so careful of at the end of a show how much time and effort you continue to put into the fans and all the people there. Like there's only so much energy you have to be a high school principal, to be a great mom. So you have to be really tight, and it's done with tremendous subtlety and finesse with these boundaries where, look, I love you. However, I need to go into my cave right now for 20 minutes to recover, and I'll be back out. We'll talk about that problem. I know you want to call me on this phone, and I know you need me right now, but I'm gonna put these boundaries up, and it's easy to say, but hard to do, and critical that we have the discipline to create boundaries, I think.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Absolutely. I think you and I have talked about before. Sometimes I think, like the classic yin and yang, the Chinese philosophy of yin and yang. The yin and yang for me of life oftentimes is self-care and service to others in our world, right? Self-care, service to others, right?
Yeah.
And really they're two parts of the whole. And I think, the boundary is, when we say, in order to give, right? Whether it's giving to the kids in the school, right? Whether it's giving to, the fans, that Allie is there for, right? Giving to others, of ourselves, we have to fill the cup, right? We have to fill the cup. And oftentimes, I've used the analogy of the oxygen mask, and it's a classic, right? You get on the airplane, and these days, for many years, they'll say, if you're traveling with someone who needs assistance and those masks come down, put on your own mask before you help others, right? In order to really optimize our ability to serve, we have to have those boundaries. And, sometimes I think, we're in this journey, we're driving the car, if we're so focused on getting to the destination that we ignore putting gas in the tank, it's not going to work out well, right? So I think we need to see the self-care as part of the service to others. I think that's, again, it's part of a subtle reframing, because sometimes I think we slip into this, if I have my boundaries, I'm being selfish, but really it is not exclusively about selfishness. It is, I think, linked to the care for others. There's a linkage there. And if we say, no, my self-care is actually part of my caring for others, it's what optimizes my ability to do this. So I think that's for me, a helpful way to think about it.
So let me just, as we come near the fourth quarter here of this podcast. So there's a story that occurred back in 1952, and ironically, it was on July 4th. And this incredible female athlete by the name of Florence Chadwick, she's an ocean swimmer, and she has already swam the English Channel, first woman to do that, and she's renowned. She's 35 years old, and she decides she wants to do something that's never been done before. She's going to swim from the coast of the Catalina Islands to the coast of California, and it's about an 18-mile swim. And the trick about the swim is the waters are bone chilling. There are massive amounts of jellyfish, and there are sharks in that water. And like the swim is no one's ever done it before. So one morning she hops in with her, she's got her wetsuit on, she's ready to start the swim. She's got her mother and this cast or this crew in this boat next to her. And the crew has rifles to shoot the jellyfish, to shoot the sharks if they attack her. And she's headed out in this incredibly difficult, no one's ever done it before, but she hops in that freezing water. And Paul, you've been in cold water before. I mean, it's tough. We've done cold exposure. And all of a sudden she's swimming, and we've been in the ocean. All of a sudden we get this jellyfish like on our shoulder, and we're like, oh my God, but she's got mounds of it. But this doesn't stop her. She's amazing. And Paul, she's swimming for hours. And like 9 hours in the swim, all of a sudden she hears a rifle shot go off. And they're shooting like a shark attack. But she doesn't stop. And Paul continues. And it's an amazing swim until all of a sudden one thing happens. This dense fog rolls in. It's so dense, Paul, she can't see in front of her. And she's gone through the water, through the jellyfish, the shark, but the fog, she loses her vision. And all of a sudden, she looks up at her mom and says, I can't go any further. And she hops up into the boat, Paul, and she's sitting there like exhausted. And all of a sudden, she looks forward and she spots like within a half mile was the coast of California. But the fog took away her vision, her ability to see her landmark, to see her goal. And she couldn't do it. Well, 2 months later, she got back on September 5th, got back in that same waters and swam through the same cold water, jellyfish, through the sharks. But this time she kept a vision. She kept that vision of where she was headed. And she became the first woman to do it. So like vision boarding is really powerful. And seeing the things that you're going to use as your self-care, like having them somewhere, you look at them, you know you're there, you've got yourself ready. I think having that, as we know, like visual imagery is so critical. Like, do you think vision boarding can really work for self-care?
Absolutely, Coach. And it's funny because, I think visualization in general, right? Like, I think vision boarding, or just, I think about things like, you and I, we both do presentations, keynotes, all these kinds of things. I still get some jitters sometimes before I get in front of, a group to present or, do my thing. And oftentimes, if I visualize, if I have a sense, of like, this is what it's going to be like. This is what the room is probably going to be like. Maybe I know a few of the people, or even if I don't know the people, right? It's like, I visualize, what this situation and the way I'd like to be in the situation. So I think visualization, whether we have, those aids, like a vision board, or other cues. I love your tape recorder. I think in some ways, it's an audio, sort of a vision in a way, right? These cues, these visualization supports, absolutely helpful. Yeah.
Visualization. Good. Well, I think that's probably all anyone can listen to. But,
Perfect.
Yeah. So, can you just take a piece of paper quick?
Sure. Yeah. Got one right in front of me.
So how many triangles do you think you could make in 20 seconds?
How many triangles could I make?
20 seconds.
In 20 seconds?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe 20. If I did one per second. Yeah.
Okay. So let's give it a try.
Okay.
Ready? On your mark, get set, go. Five, four, three, two, one, and stop. Okay, how many did you get, Paul?
I think I got more than 20, Coach. You want me to count them up here?
Yeah, about.
33.
33. So what if I told you you could probably get 100?
I'll tell you, as I was jotting down these triangles, I thought, I think I underestimated. So yeah, I think, yes, I think that's probably possible. Yeah.
Perhaps, you think you could get 100 in 20 seconds?
Yeah, I think, probably if I really practiced and applied myself, maybe I could.
Or if you had a strategy.
Strategy, yes.
Someone tells you how to do it, Paul, you could do it. You just don't know how to do it yet.
Right.
And when you ask someone who knows how to do something that you don't know how to do, they might just give you this key that unlocks the palace door. So obviously, Paul, you're well aware of making 5-point stars.
Ah, yes.
So 5-point stars look like this. They don't have to be fancy, but Paul, like in a moment, like in 20, you can do 100 without any question, but you just don't know how to do it. So who are you going to call today? Who are you going to ask today? Someone who knows something that you'd like to know how to do, and just ask for help. So maybe we'll end it on that.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Coach. This is beautiful. Thank you, brother. Yes.
Thank you, my friend.
All right.
Love you so much.
Love you too. Love you too, brother.
We're gonna see each other at LBI.
We will see each other in just a couple weeks. I look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Okay.
Okay.